All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be learning three main things. One, dealing with volume nodes within geometry nodes, which helps you instance things within and really turning any object into a volume that you can mesh out. It's very cool, very powerful. We're also going to be learning how to manipulate and use volume, which will create clouds and things like that. And we're going to do it in Eevee, which can be a bit more of a struggle. But we're going to learn how to create volumes, kind of a nebula looking thing. And then lastly, we're going to add some camera shake to this animation, which is going to make it just look a little more chaotic. And that's going to present a problem for looping. So I'm going to show you how to take camera shake animation and loop that movement. So let's get into it. All right, so first thing, of course, is getting in that plane so that we can start to introduce our geometry nodes. And I'm going to go up here, double click it, and call it particles. And here we go. We can head straight into geometry nodes and collapse that window. Let's click new, and we have now our stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get in a cube. And then we're going to click and drag here, click 3, and then on the Y, we're going to do 16, which scaled it by 8 up here. Now what we can do is introduce a really exciting node that I encourage you to explore more of once we're done here, because it introduces a lot of interesting possibilities here, which is a mesh to volume, which I typed that in backwards. So we're going to do mesh to volume, plug that there, and it now turns this thing into a volume, which now allows us to mess with things within. So what that means is we're going to get a really cool node. Now I'm just going to type in volume, and these are our volume nodes. Not a lot, but enough to have a lot of fun with. And so what we're going to do is we're going to distribute points in the volume. So now this is kind of this guy is kind of a gatekeeper node, which allows you to now instance things within it, because normally what you would do is instance on points. And so you would have, basically you would subdivide this guy, and you could only instance the points on the surface, but it'd be hollow. So you'd be traveling through a bunch of points here, but it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be good. You wouldn't be able to put points in here that then our camera can fly through. And that is the point of doing this mesh to volume, distribute points in that volume. And you can turn any object into volumes. And so we are going to keep it on random, but one cool thing is you can turn it into grid, and then now you can instance on all these grids. And so you can make it not quite so insane, but then you can instance on all of these points, and that's really, really cool. And then you can bring up your density here. So you have that randomness, and you have grid that you can play with and add objects within other existing objects. It's very fun and very exciting. So what we're going to do is we're going to get an icosphere. Well, first we need to go ahead and get an instance on points. Because we have our points, we need to instance on them. Plug that there, and then we can get our icosphere. So ICO, icosphere, plug that into the instance, and then now we have all of these guys. So we'll bring our subdivisions up to 2, bring this guy down, and now we have this. Now let's quickly just go ahead and set up the camera loop. I'm going to hit new collection, and we're going to type in loop. And then what we can do now is, just for my own visual reference, what we're going to do is hit S. We're going to get a plane. Well, not hit S, sorry. Shift A, plane. I'm going to hit S8. And that is going to contain it. We're going to add that. Also, I'm going to hit M and click loop. So now let's go ahead and instance this down. I could just show you how to create this whole thing from start to finish in terms of showing how to set up these particles, but I like to have fun while I design, so I want to get that camera flying through it now. So that's what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Shift A, collection instance loop, click on this, and then I'm hold down Control and make sure that plane touches there. Alt D, and we're going to do it one more time. So we have this, and then you can go ahead and now delete that plane. We know it all works. I'm gonna hit the tilde key, click front, so we can introduce our camera, and it's looking the right way. Now, because I know I set up this cube to be 16 on the Y, then this camera here in the transform settings on the Y can go to -8 because that is half of 16. And so to animate it, we'll just go back one frame. I'm going to stay at 250 frames. I'm going to click on the keyframe, go to the very end and type in +8 here. Okay, now we can go back to our geometry nodes lesson. So I'm going to press play and we are flying through a field of objects. And this is something very simple that I showed with the box method of just putting objects everywhere. But in this case, we did it procedurally and it is a completely seamless loop. So what we can do now is in my camera, I'm going to go ahead and give my camera a 35mm lens in the camera settings. And we can go back to our particles. What I'm going to do is just bring these particles to be very, very small. And then I'm going to bring up my density. So now, as you can see, if you look closely, we are flying through a field of these particles. So let's go ahead and view those in Eevee. So I'm going to click on the render button and go to Eevee. And I'm going to go to the render view. Let's go ahead and get a material on this. We're going to get a set material right over here. Let's go ahead and add an emission material. So we'll click new and we'll switch it from the principled surface to an emissive surface. And then we'll go ahead and grab that here. And then you can give it like a strength of like 10. So here we go. We're traveling through a ridiculous field of particles. And it's pretty ridiculous and ugly, especially when we go back to the full 35mm view. We're traveling through all these, but it's pretty ugly up in here. You can see all of those. Here's my trick for helping us with that. It's kind of an opacity effect. So first, here in the world, we'll bring our brightness down to black. And then now we have, you know, a very space-looking view, but still, hey, we can see this cube of particles that get instanced into the distance. So we'll click on the volume, add volume, and then we'll do a principled volume. And then, so if we bring that density down to 0, it's like we never added it. So you can introduce density, and you can see them disappearing. And now, you can't see them in the distance because there's the volume that's kind of hiding them. And now we're just able to travel through a nice field of objects. And you can change the seed if, say, you're running right into one. But now we have something really, really cool and really nice. Now, what's next? Let's go ahead and add in our clouds, our emissive nebula clouds. So here's how we're going to do that. Let's hit Shift-A, Mesh, Cube, and then here with this cube, we're going to just label it now. I'm going to call it Vol for volume, and then we're going to put that into this loop. So now you can see him being instanced. So let's go ahead and scale him. On the Y, we're going to scale it by 8, and that's going to make a perfect, perfect loop here. Bring it up a little bit, and then bring it out a little bit, and then we can Control A and apply that scale. This is what's going to allow us to create our volumes. Volumes have to exist either in the world, which we already did that. We created a volume in the world, but those volumes have no light, so we can't see them. All they're doing is hiding those particles in the distance. Now we're going to add an object that will now hold volume that we're going to be able to manipulate, add some light to it, and so that we can see it here in space, basically. So click on the volume in your outliner here, and we'll click on shading, and we can start to add our volume. So I'm going to delete these two here. Go to the Eevee view. We'll click new. And because we're adding volume, which is not a surface right here, we're not adding any surfaces. We're adding volumes. So delete the principled, and then search principled volume and plug that into volume. And then you'll notice, you can add more density here. It's the same exact thing, but I'm going to do 0, and we'll bring it down to 0 on the density. So now we're going to play with this emission strength, right? So we'll give it a strength, of 1 maybe. And then let's go ahead and plug a color ramp into it. So we're not going to plug the texture into the emission strength. You might think, oh, we can play with the emission strength in 3-dimensional space. Technically, yes. It's a little more frustrating to work with it in that way. So we can play with the emission color and use brightness and darkness to reveal where things are going to be shown. So we can plug emission right into color, the color ramp, and then we'll get in a Musgrave texture. We're going to hit Control T on that, use the object coordinate, and plug height into the color ramp. And now we have this. We have all of these volumes. I'm going to go ahead and get in a timeline. We're going to need that, and it is seamless. You'll see here where it does this weird jump. That's just an Eevee preview thing. So say we'll notice some patterns. If we go here, they're still there. So this is already seamless. So what you can do is take this color ramp and crunch in right here, and then you can crunch this guy in too. Bring up your emission strength, and now we have all these globs, which is what we're looking for. We want a bunch of globs, and then you can bring that scale to like 4, maybe even bring it down further. Now we have all of these globs that we can then manipulate and turn into, little nebulas or little clouds, really whatever you want to identify them as. I know some people might say, hey, it doesn't look like clouds. It looks like whatever. Doesn't really matter. So now we have all of these guys that we can manipulate. But again, to get this to work right, whatever your settings are, because this is very volatile, honestly. Your results are unlikely to look just like mine, but will get very close. But you want to have big blobs, because that's what's actually going to be the establishing nebulas here. Next thing we're going to do, in the shading workspace, if you want to add detail to something, you would add a texture here in the vector line. And so that's how we're going to do it. These are globular. We want them to add noise and stuff, specifically noise, to make them look like they're clouds. So we'll go ahead and get a noise texture, and we'll plug it right here. And then we'll just kind of move that scale around to see, okay, it's working. And if we bring our scale, in my case, to 0.7, you can see something happening. We can switch over to 4D and play with that seed value. We can't really see it because there's a lot going on and it messed it all up. But we still want to add detail. So I'm going to show you how to create a bypass system so we only use a little bit of this, not the entire thing. So we'll get in a mix color, plug that there, and then we'll get our object coordinate and plug it into B. So let me explain what's going on here so we can bring that factor back. This is, when we bring our factor to the right, it is going straight from this object coordinate straight into the mix and then into the rest of them, right? If you bring your factor to the left, it is going from the object coordinate through the noise texture and then to everything else, which means that this slider can tell you how much, right? This is complete. This noise texture, if we get to the left, is completely showing noise texture. Or the right, it is bypassing it, not showing it at all. And this is showing only half of the effect of the noise texture, which means now we could start adding detail, give it detail of 12, or all the way up to 16, really. And then you can add it further. But see, now we have clouds, globs, clouds. And we can fly through our clouds now and start to see. And so now we can see what we're making, and we can fly through it. It's really cool. And then now we can do that. What I want to do is go ahead and introduce some color into our scene. So we'll do something like this. And then what you can do is hover over here and hit Control C, and then go to this black one, Control V, and then bring it down so that there's still a little bit of green going in, and it really like melds this whole project together. And I'm going to bring my color ramp over here like this, and then we can bring our emission strength up, and then we can take this black one and bring it closer to, closer to black, but still just a little bit of green. Oh, we didn't want to do that. Bring them up, down, like this. There we go. So now we already have something really nice looking, and the more you bring this over, the more cloud it's going to reveal. But hey, there is more distortion that we can do. I'm going to highlight these guys and hit G to move it over. We can distort even further. We can add another noise texture. So let's do that. Add a noise texture and plug it here. And then I'm going to bring my scale to 0.2. So we can play with that scale and we can do this and it's kind of whack. So let's do another bypass. So we'll hit Shift A, MIX, mix color, and then plug that into B. So again, the same exact bypassing that we just did. I'm going to bring my scale in this guy to 0.2. And then if we bring it here, it's like that. And then we can add more, right? More things to this and make it more nebula looking. So if I bring my scale up, it starts to distort it even further. See how cool that looks? Nothing at all. So no noise texture. We start to introduce the noise texture and it starts to give even more detail in those clouds. Now in Eevee, to get more detail in clouds, you'll go to the Eevee settings here in the render button. And then on volumetrics, you'll go from 8. So 16 is the lowest quality. It starts to look pixelated. And then 2 is the absolute highest quality. You can see that. So now would be a good time to save your project file. So if I press play, it is going to look really awesome. And so all of this is completely editable to you. And you can go from 3D to 4D and start to introduce a randomness seed to these volumes. And they take a minute to load. So you can edit these volumes to look however you want them to look. You can play with them here. You can play with it here to add more volume, more distortion back here. And as you play with it, you'll start to realize, what does what. So there it is. So I'll bring this down. We don't need to see too much of this now. So we'll go back to the beginning here. And so there we go. Now you can start to introduce, what does what, all of these volumes. It looks really, really, really cool. So I'm just going to leave it here. I think this is a good place to stop, but you can distort it further if you'd like, and add more things, add more texture, add even more volume. It's really totally up to you. Now let's go ahead and introduce camera shake. So here we go. I'm going to save my file, go to my camera. I'm going to bring up my timeline a little bit. Everything is lagging. And of course, if it's lagging, you can go to your volumetrics and go down to 8. Okay, camera, we'll go here. And then here on the rotation, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go right click, insert single keyframe. Now he's there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new window, click here, and go to the graph editor. And the graph editor is going to allow us to further manipulate, our keyframes. This is our keyframe right here. We just added one. And so what you can do is this thing called modifiers, add modifier, and then do noise. And now he's looking from side to side really aggressively, right? So what you can do is make sure you have your camera clicked. Go over here and you can see, okay, what are we clicking on? I want to mess with my Z Euler rotation. And then if we bring our scale to like 10, it's much more manageable. And then on the strength, we can do like 0.3. And now we're doing that. Now I did mess up on the Y location. I accidentally added the noise to that as well. You can just delete it, see? So you can select anything that has animation. So now we're back. We just have, and we'll make this window bigger. Now we just have the Euler rotation with the noise texture. So click here, you can see the modifiers, you can add some. Click here, you can see our modifiers. So now we have this, right? It's camera shake. It's kind of ridiculous. So you can bring your strength down till it's just a really marginal small amount. But we'll notice something. It's not seamless. There is a bit of a jump. And if I play with the phase here, just randomize it, see if we can get a more obvious. There we go. So this camera shake is much more obviously not seamless here. Boom, see that? Or it moves. How do we fix that? That will be with restrict frame range. So the way it's going to work is you can click on restrict frame range. We know we have 250 frames. So we want to start it at frame 1 and end it at 250. So we have everything back. And here is the magic. Blend in, blend out. So we blend in just like that. See, that's blending in. This dot, this position right here is 0, which means no rotation whatsoever. And so it's going to go from 0 and blend into that moving. So we can just blend it in like that. See that? So we'll say 20, 20 is a good blend in. So it is going to start at 0 and go right into that. And so how aggressively you want that to happen is completely up to you. Maybe 30. We'll do 30. And then we can just type in on out. And we'll go over there. We'll go to where it stops at frame 250. See that? We'll type in 30. And now it's going to blend in. So now it's going into 0 and starting at 0. 0 meaning no rotation. And then all of these will be left, right. So it's going, see, that's going left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And so it's 0. So again, the rule with looping, the beginning and the end have to be exactly the same, which that's what this blend in does. It ends right into 0. So now, if we go to the end of our timeline, just view, and then it goes into shaking our camera. So let's go ahead and right click on the Y here, and we'll do the exact same thing. So insert single keyframe on the Y, and then right up here, click on Y Euler rotation. You can see that. So now we can access that, add modifier, noise. Oh my goodness, it's so bad. We'll do a scale of 6 here, a strength of 0.3, maybe a strength of 0.2. There we go. And then you can blend in and blend out. Honestly, we'll do a scale of 10, right? Strength of 0.1. No, we'll do 0.2. We'll keep it crazy. Restrict frame range. Start at frame 1, end at frame 250, and then 30. 30. And now we have, and then you can also do it on the X if you want to as well. Have fun, do whatever you want to do. And then we'll just bring this back over here. And now we can look this whole scene. We are flying through it. We have volumes, we have everything. It looks cool. If I click render, we can see how it looks in the render. We have our motion blur doing some fun stuff here. So if you can see, make sure you turn on your motion blur, and we have everything we need. Of course, before you render, I would recommend on volumetrics, pop that up to 2, and then we can click render and see how that looks. And there we go. This is how it looks in the render. It's awesome. It's beautiful. It's got camera shake. It's got everything you want in a space looking render. And you can see how it does pause, but it's not going to do that in the final render. But there we go. That is it. Hopefully you like this one. This is one of my favorites. I think it just looks so awesome. And you can add fewer frames to make it quicker, more frames to make it slow. You can have all types of fun with this concept, and I love it. But with that being said, somebody's making noise down the hallway, so it's a good time to end it now. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson.